Age of Men is over. The time of the Orc has come.
Alright, hello YouTube, welcome back to the Eric Reviews YouTube channel, and in today's video we're going to be getting back to some Lord of the Rings history videos. And so I wanted to pose the question, because I found it very interesting, because it's not a topic that is really talked about too much in the Lord of the Rings community, and it is like culminating one of my favorite parts of Lord of the Rings in the Moria segment, especially in Fellowship of the Ring. My question to you guys, and for the audience watching, is how did Balin's party survive so long, given that the Balrog, or Durin's Bane, was still present in Moria? In all of the references to Balin's expedition, nothing is brought up about Durin's Bane. And we also know that Balin's party traveled through Moria to the west. They were really in the eastern side of it, but they did make an expedition to the west as well. And nothing really came of Durin's Bane. Durin's Bane never attacked them from what we know of. He really did not have a presence here at all. It was mainly just the orcs and then also the Watcher on the west side of the wall that the Fellowship encounters. So that is what I kind of want to talk about in this video, because it does seem quite interesting. What are the possible explanations for this, and what could we really figure out about Balin's expedition? So the first thing I want to take a look at is we have to compare the Fellowship's journey into Moria and Balin's journey into Moria. Balin went in at 2,889 TA. He is then actually slain on November 10th of 2,994 TA. So there's a 5-year gap here in which they were in Moria and lived quite peacefully. So why is that? And so the Lord of the Rings tells us, okay, the Balrog really seemed like he came alive and took an interest in the Fellowship, mainly because of what they were bringing into Moria, right? But we know that, again, they are attacked by some wargs before Moria. Close enough that, again, Gandalf has to use a lot of his true power and his true form, which again would alert the Balrog to his presence. So that part of it is already known. The same way Gandalf can feel the Balrog's presence at a certain point, the Balrog could also feel Gandalf's presence. So you have that part of it, that Gandalf is a Maiar, something very similar to the Balrog himself, and so the two would know of their presence, more or less. Now, you also have to compound the idea that they also were carrying a ring which had the essence of Sauron, again, a being very similar to Gandalf and the Balrog as well. So you just have a overwhelming amount of power going into Moria. If you think about why Glorfindel is not taken on the adventure, is because Glorfindel just has a really big radius of power. People would be able to sense it, right? The Nazgul would be able to sense his power. And so when you look at that, when they go into Moria, it's quite obvious why they get attacked by the Balrog to begin with, is because the Balrog is going to be drawn to that power. And that, just be honest, being curious of what it is, right? Of being, what is this Maiar being coming in? But there's also this other presence that also carries Maiar type power, in it being the ring. So the Balrog would obviously want to figure out what this is. So when we go to Balin and his expedition, the thing that I think is the biggest part of why the Balrog probably didn't attack the dwarves is based on the fact that if he did know they were there, which I think he probably did, right? He would have sensed them, heard them, right? It doesn't seem like they were very quiet. Once they had taken the Eastern Gate, they start colonizing, they start exploring, trying to figure out where all these treasures are. Balin himself was looking for the Dwarven Ring of Power that was said to be in Moria. It wasn't there, it had already been reclaimed, but again, that's what he was looking for, right? There's even an expedition later when they get much more desperate to go to the West Gate. So they go all the way through more or less what our main crew's journey was in Fellowship of the Ring, and they're never attacked by the Balrog. They're attacked by the Watcher, they're attacked by the orcs coming through the East Gate, and that's why they get sandwiched, but the Balrog is not a factor whatsoever. And so it makes you question it, because when we think about the Balrog and his relationship to the goblins or the orcs in Moria, it kind of feels like it's more the Balrog tolerates their presence more than it's a, oh yeah, these are like my underling servants, right? And so that's something that you could have seen maybe the Balrog felt with the dwarves. I don't know if that's the same idea, because the problem is, it's just very unlikely to me to say that the Balrog would not have known they were there. Maybe you could say the Balrog was in a type of slumber, similar to, like, say, Smaug, for instance, and so he wasn't really awakened until we see later on with the Fellowship when that power awakens him into action. That all could really be possible. We just don't know, right? Like, there's not a lot to build upon on Balin's expedition because we know very little about it, right? We know that, yes, this expedition took place. We know what their goals were, and we know for a while it was going pretty good, right? They were sending messages back to Erebor. But then we know all of a sudden everything goes silent. There's no messages, nothing happens. They're presumed to be dead. The Fellowship goes into Moria. We figure out and put some of the pieces together onto what actually happened, what was their fate. But we don't know any of the Balrog's motivations. We don't know what would have made the Balrog tick into allowing the dwarves to stay in Moria for so long. Like, 5 years is a decent amount of time. Maybe not to a Balrog, but it's a decent amount of time when you think about it. And so I find it very hard to believe the Balrog did not know they were there, and my conclusion is that the Balrog, A, was just uninterested in just bothering with them at all, because they were a small contingent of dwarves, or it was more the idea that it was maybe in some sort of slumber or just not really bothering and not caring about them at all. That is kind of how I think this would have gone down, but let me know what your guys' thoughts are, because again, I haven't really seen a video talking about this specific idea. I've heard a lot of videos about Balin's expedition, of course, but about the specific idea of what was going on with Durin's Bane during this point. If you guys have some theories, I'd love to hear them, and drop them in the comments, and I'll see you guys all in the next video. Bye, guys.